Welcome to Saturday Morning Trek, just one of many podcasts on Trek FM. If you'd like to help keep Star Trek discussion coming your way each day, consider becoming a network patron through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/trekfm and find out how you can become part of the team. That's patreon.com/trekfm.
This is DC Fontana. You're listening to Trek FM.
It's set now for action and adventure. Future's here for us to see. It's 2200 AD.
Their mission, to fight injustice, to right that which is wrong, and
to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Welcome to Saturday Morning Trek, harken back to the days of wood panel dens, console televisions, and two-headed thought-conjured dragons. I'm Aaron Harvey.
I'm Adam Drosin.
And today we're going to talk about Once Upon a Planet. But before we do, I want to take a moment to give a shout-out to a very special anniversary I know we all celebrated this week of September 8th. We gathered together with our friends and our family, maybe had a party, and turned on Beyond the Farthest Star and celebrated the 43rd anniversary of Star Trek the Animated Series. No? Yeah, okay, well, maybe you celebrated the 50th anniversary of Star Trek by watching The Man Trap, the first aired episode of TOS, but this is also the anniversary of the first TAS episode. You can listen to our review of that episode. It's podcast episode number 3, Hypergravity, and you can find that at trek.fm or on iTunes. Welcome back, Adam. It's been a while since we've recorded together. We've both been off at Star Trek Las Vegas.
Back in the wood panel den.
Yeah.
We've had housekeeping come, and they've put some lemon glow on it. It smells pretty good. It's looking pretty good. We've got the Atari hooked up. We're at the sugary cereal. That's the thing. I just realized that if we're going to keep recording these podcasts, I need to have a bowl of sugary cereal. And
Actually, Darren and I had talked about doing that. We were going to have, what cereal are we eating this week? So maybe we'll have to revive that idea that we didn't implement to begin with.
well, it is September, so I'm looking forward to going to Target soon and finding the Frankenberry and the Count Chocula and the Boo Berry. That's my kind of jam. It is of that era, the 70s era. So we'll have to make that happen soon.
I want to get some Quisp cereal, too. I've always liked that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sort of tastes like the equivalent of what they do with like corn chips now. Almost as like this puffy, it's got a very corn taste to it. So I actually have an animation cell of the Quisp cereal commercial that was done by the same people who illustrated Rocking Bullwinkle.
So this has been Saturday Morning Cereal.
So, no, but today we are going to talk about Once Upon a Planet, which is sort of a sequel to an episode you really like from the original series. Right up there with Cat's Paw.
It's up there with Cat's Paw. It's up there with Spectre going at shore leave. They're going back to the shore leave planet and getting into some situations that you might expect if you're familiar with that original episode.
The crew of the USS Enterprise is ready for some downtime, and they head to the so-called shore leave amusement park planet in the Omicron Delta region. Dr. McCoy, along with Lieutenants Uhura and Sulu, beams down to the surface to encounter a familiar white rabbit and Alice from their earlier trip. A short while later, McCoy visits a not-at-all problematic in the 1970s Southern plantation, but he's soon attacked by the Queen of Hearts and several of her card-playing Confederates. No pun intended. With an emergency beam-out, McCoy and Sulu are safe, but Uhura is trapped when a hovering robot steals her communicator. Kirk discusses the matter with his crew and has all other landing parties recalled. Kirk takes a group with him to rescue Uhura, unaware that the master computer controlling the world has decided to, quote, turn them off, unquote, despite Uhura telling it that that would be an act of murder. The computer sends an energy block, cutting off the Enterprise's communications and transporter beams, and prevents the launch of an emergency shuttlecraft. Meanwhile, Kirk and the others find the caretaker of the planet's tombstone and realize that after his death, the planet and the master computer have become dangerous. The rescue party is soon imperiled by pterodactyls and a giant cat, and the computer gains control of the Enterprise until Mr. Eriks locks it out with manual control overrides. Back in the underground lair, the planetary computer explains to Uhura that it's had a lifetime of service and it's time for a change. McCoy, thanks to his never-ending bag of drugs, helps Spock fake death so the computer will take him to the underground complex the way it did McCoy on the first trip. When the robot takes Spock, Kirk manages to gain access to the underground complex, while Sulu and McCoy face a two-headed fire-breathing dragon, and the Enterprise crew deals with the loss of gravity aboard the ship. Below, Kirk, Spock, and Uhura convince the computer that it is useful and that it can find fulfillment making other visitors happy instead of trying to take the Enterprise and seek out its fellow computers. The computer finds their argument logical and relents its attacks rather quickly, leaving the Enterprise crew to begin shore leave anew. It begins with McCoy, Sulu, Alice and the White Rabbit, and the two-headed dragon having a picnic.
A glorious day.
And a complete breakfast with...
Blueberry.
Huh? Into the waves, Boo.
Bye-bye. Frankenberry has strawberry-flavored sweeties.
Count Chocula has chocolate sweeties.
And blueberry with berry-flavored sweeties.
And here are the mini monsters. 5 monsters in all. You can trade them with friends and put on a show. 1 mini monster in specially marked boxes of the monster cereals.
This show originally aired November 3rd, 1973, and it was written by Chuck Menville and Len Jansen. And like we said, it was based on the Shore Leave story by Theodore Sturgeon. And both Chuck and Len started out at Disney, but were sort of unhappy with the whole climate. And apparently back then it was, you were really put into a bucket of what you were doing, and literally like your garbage can had to be like emptied and measured at certain. You couldn't have personal pictures on your desk, and it was actually like that when I interviewed for a web job in the 90s. They were like, somebody's like, "Come over here, look at this." I'm like, "What?" And they had a picture of Mickey Mouse, and they flipped it up, and there was a family picture underneath it. It's like, "This is where I hide my family photos." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to work here." So apparently that climate stems way back into the 50s, possibly earlier. But they had an image that they really wanted. So I think that's probably changed by now. I would think, 20 years after when I was first there, I would hope.
I'm not as well versed in the Disney culture. I know people really love and are immersed in Disney the same way people are with Trek. And I never went to Disney World, Disneyland as a kid, so I just don't get it. I think Fantasia is pretty cool and weird, and
it's the magics of Megas 2 of Disney.
That's a great point, and leads into a larger point about probably every episode of this show from here on out is I kind of started on a real high note in terms of the amount and depth of thought that I have about any of these animated series episodes. And the amount of times I've watched it, I've seen that episode maybe a dozen times, and these other ones, maybe my second time seeing them now. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, you have fresher views then.
Sure.
Right? So, but anyway, these two went on and they wrote together, and they actually did a lot of other Filmation shows. They did Arc 2, which was the live action post-apocalyptic kids show. Shazam, ISIS, both also live action. Space Sentinels, which was sort of a multicultural superhero. I think it had the first black female superhero on Saturday morning cartoons. Cosby Kids, and Lassie's Rescue Rangers, which maybe we'll play a clip to drive Jarek crazy.
all those shows sound legit amazing. ISIS, I'm sort of familiar with, where she's the Egyptian kind of princess hero.
She flies kind of standing up.
That's right. And she spins around and all that. And Shazam, if I'm not mistaken, is based on the character from DC Comics. Is that right?
Billy Barton turns into Billy Batson. Maybe it is. He turns into Captain Marvel. So it's a kid that turns into...
Captain Marvel, Shazam, DC Comics. Cool connections.
Yep. And my favorite thing that he wrote was that actually Chuck wrote on his own was Condor, which was with Ray Wise and Carolyn Seymour, which we know from I think that maybe they both have been on Star Trek.
Ray Wise definitely been on Star Trek.
Yeah, and then Carolyn Seymour, she was Marista Yale in First Contact on TNG, and she played a Romulan something on TNG as well. But this was set in a futuristic Los Angeles of 1999, featuring a crosstown monorail, robotic food servers, and a reuse of the spinner cop from Blade Runner. So that was fun. But Condor was about a crime-fighting organization that goes up against Black Widow, a female master criminal, speaking of, like, comics. Not that one, though, who is played by Carolyn Seymour. Black Widow steals the national security codes and threatens to blow up Hollywood unless her old enemy Proctor, who's a Condor operative, is turned over to her. And Condor's sidekick is also a robot. I kind of buried the lead there.
Condor's cool.
Yeah. I have a copy of it. We'll have to watch it sometime.
I've seen it.
Oh, have you?
I saw it on Netflix streaming one night at like 3 a.m. And I'm a big fan of Ray Wise from Twin Peaks and Tim and Eric's shows. And it's just one of those kind of 3 a.m. shows where I don't remember anything about it. But I remember thinking Condor's pretty sweet. I do remember it was supposed to be going to be the pilot of a series. I think it picked up, so it became like a movie of the week.
Right. It was. I just thought it was kind of fun because they used like forced perspective to do like the monorails and anything that was like a building or something big. It was just a model, and it was shot outside, so it kind of looked real. It was done decently. And if you watched it too closely, you can kind of see the cars were bumping a little bit too much for big full size cars that would not be moving that much. But no, it was fun. And then Chuck's last project was writing Birds of a Feather, an episode of Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
But he died in 1992 before the episode could be fully written. So Bryn Stevens? I'll have to look that up. Wrote the teleplay based on his story concept, and he received story credit for the completed episode. And, you know, Len and Chuck's partnership basically ended with Chuck's death in 1992, and Len remained active for a few more years as mainly a story editor for Sonic the Hedgehog, and he also wrote some episodes of Baywatch Nights. That was the end of his career at that point.
That's pretty great.
He retired.
Batman animated series is probably the equivalent of your Trek animated series for me. I watched that a lot when I was a kid, and I just recently started rewatching it a little bit because when I get a little bit trekked out and I want to take a break, I've been reading comics lately, so I've been getting back into comics.
Yep,
Batman animated series.
We actually hung out at the comic book store the other day.
That's true. It was great. We got some DC comics, just like we were talking about. And no, Batman animated series still very visually striking, and the writing is really good. The voice acting is really good. I think it holds up pretty well. But Baywatch Nights does not hold up as well. The interesting thing,
I may have seen one episode. I don't know.
Well, here's the interesting thing about Baywatch Nights is I never thought I'd say that on a podcast, that there's an interesting thing about Baywatch Nights, but I was reading a book about the behind the scenes making of Baywatch, which is actually a really, really interesting book. That's genuine though, but Baywatch Nights they wanted to cancel it immediately, but they were making so much money internationally from syndication on Baywatch.
It was like huge in Germany, I think.
It was so big in Germany and all over Europe and even Asia. It was like a worldwide smash, and they thought if we cancel Baywatch Nights immediately, it's going to tamper the Baywatch brand in general. And so they kept Baywatch Nights on for a full 2 seasons, even though the people making it knew it wasn't any good, just out of an obligation to this, you know.
Didn't it start to get like really weird at some point?
It had nothing.
I want to say it had like a monster or something in it. Or,
honestly, my Baywatch Nights knowledge is not that deep. My Baywatch knowledge isn't that deep in general, but I know it had nothing to do with the original concept of being like a lifeguard crew at a really popular beach. It was just David Hasselhoff as a detective.
That's what it was. Yeah. And I think I seem to remember, like, in the back recesses of my mind, that it kind of got Dark Shadows like.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So this has been Saturday Night Baywatch.
We have a lot of different shows in this show. No, I remember when Baywatch first started that it was like, until they decided to go with whatever it became, it was a very by the book sort of like just a drama, kind of like an ER kind of thing where it's like drama on the beach, and there was not the running in slow motion with the sexy swimsuit, scenes and stuff like that. So
yeah,
they had an earthquake, and it's like, oh, we got to, help the people. And I just remember watching it, and then it was like, I didn't watch it and came back and like, what the hell happened to this show? Now it's like a soap opera.
Well, coming summer of 2017, you can see Baywatch: The Next Generation, as I like to call it, coming from everybody's favorite studio, Paramount Pictures.
Is that true?
Yeah, Paramount's doing the new Baywatch with The Rock and Zac Efron.
Okay.
And The Rock, a.k.a. the Pandari champion from Star Trek Voyager. Sunkatse. Deep cut for my Trek heads.
To the journey.
To the journey. They've never done that. It's always this little, I'm just trying to, every time I say to the journey now, I'm going to try and do it a different way from the standard to the journey.
Cool.
This is a weird way to start the podcast, but that's...
Well, speaking of saying things, we can go into the voices. That's a nice, unnatural transition.
No, it was smooth. That was nice. Good pivot.
The amusement park computer is played by George Takei. Lieutenant Gabler is James Doohan. The White Rabbit, James Doohan. You're going to... Some of these voices are going to be familiar. Alice was played by Nichelle Nichols, and the Queen of Hearts was Majel Barrett. So, the amusement park computer, I don't think I recognized as George Takei when I was listening.
No, he was deep. He was deep in that character.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
"O my queen," said the royal sorcerer to Hatshepsut, "with this amulet, you and your descendants are endowed by the goddess Isis with the powers of the animals and the elements. You will soar as the falcon soars, run with the speed of gazelles, and command the elements of sky and earth." 3,000 years later, a young science teacher dug up this lost treasure and found she was heir to the secrets of Isis. And so, unknown to even her closest friends, Rick Mason and Cindy Lee, she became a dual person. Andrea Thomas, teacher.
Almighty Isis.
And Isis, dedicated foe of evil, defender of the weak, champion of truth and justice.
Chosen from among all others by the immortal elders Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, Mercury, Billy Batson and his mentor travel the highways and byways of the land on a never-ending mission to right wrongs, to develop understanding, and to seek justice for all. In time of dire need, young Billy has been granted the power by the immortals to summon awesome forces at the utterance of a single word. A word which transforms him in a flash into the mightiest of mortal beings, Captain Marvel.
So, what was your initial reaction to the episode?
Disappointment.
Disappointment. Well, and I got something to say about that when I'll let you talk, and then I'll jump in.
Well, but I do really like Shore Leave, the original series episodes, one of my favorite TOS episodes, and I just like the vibe of it. It's just I call it surrealism light. Just when the White Rabbit shows up, it's just such a great moment for me, and Sulu firing the gun and just the look on his face.
It just no sense to do that. But
no, the ensign in her princess dress and the samurai, everything is. It's that 60s kind of cheapness. If you're a fan of Batman 66 and that kind of vibe, it's that for Star Trek, and I really like that. I really like Cat's Paw in the same way.
Of also props and things like that they could
exactly
do to keep it cheaper.
And they're out in some park somewhere, and it's fun to see them off the ship a little bit on some planet. And I do really like that episode. And if you've ever read any of the Making of Star Trek or These Are the Voyages books by Mark Cushman, you'll know that Theodore Sturgeon, the very famous science fiction author who wrote this script, apparently had a lot of more out there ideas of what to present on the planet and just really crazy scenarios that they get into. But like what I just said, the realities of late 60s television prohibited that. And I think that's something that people always kind of look to in terms of the animated series and its potential for just going further in terms of what you can show with aliens and scenarios. And that's the disappointment of this one for me, is they could have done so much with the shore leave planet, and it just feels a little sparse, to put it politely.
Yeah, I kind of had, that was in my notes, that it had kind of, it wasn't really a rehash of the original, which is nice. I mean, it's some of the elements are, but there's a darker plot line underneath it. But it had too many of those cartoon cliches, just like, fire-breathing dragon.
I mean, and comparatively, the dragon is like one of the best things of the episode, just because there really isn't a whole ton going on. It's kind of sad because, just thinking about it now, it's like, man, they must have just been really burnt out and really needed shore leave because their imaginations are not popping. And that's another kind of downfall.
Well, was that created by their imagination, or was that at that point the computer just trying to stop them?
It's hard to say. I don't know, because a big part of it is, the introduction of Sulu being like, hey, McCoy, remember when we were here last time and you thought of the White Rabbit? The White Rabbit showed up, and then the White Rabbit shows up again.
Yeah.
It just feels like, oh boy, like a little bit paint by the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That dragon was reused later in the first episode of Space Sentinels, which we talked about earlier, which is also written by the same people, so it's kind of interesting. Minus a head, actually. There was only one head in that one.
Yes, but in the Cosby Kids, it had an extra head. So
right. Oh yeah, what was that? Fat Albert.
Fat Albert, the Cosby Kids, and the four-headed dragon.
It did have that sort of paint by numbers as far as what you might expect as a sequel. There was a sequel written for the original series, and it was supposed to have mechanical arms and things like that. So I'm wondering how much of that was sort of ported into this episode. Just because we saw the thing with a lot of mechanical arms. That seemed to be like a big thing that, you see originally when Uhura gets kidnapped, the arm comes out and grabs her communicator, and so
it's a good episode for all you mechanical arm fans in the audience.
Right. I think it would have been nice to see something that you would have got more story out of, or if you could have done more with it. I don't know if it would require more time or just sort of taking away from some of that repetitiveness, would be to see the computer transforming the Enterprise a little bit more, because it felt like, it's like he kept thinking of the Enterprise as the slave that kept the people. Like maybe he was trying to dismantle the ship or doing more with the, he kind of made it go out of control. It flew around and they lost gravity, which we got to see without gravity, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Any novel fans, let us know on Babel Conference or social media if there's a novel where they go back to the shore leave planet, because if you can't nail it in live action, you can't nail it in animation. I hope you can nail it in a novel where they get, they finally go back for a third time and this planet's just tearing itself to shreds. Another animation episode I think of, one of the great episodes of The Simpsons, where they go to Itchy and Scratchy Land.
Oh, yeah.
And the Itchy and Scratchy robots malfunction and start killing people. Reminded me a bit of that as well.
So is that where Lisa drank the water in the It's a Small...
No, that's where they go to Duff Gardens.
Okay.
The other theme park in the Simpsons universe, I suppose.
I am the Lizard Queen.
She is the Lizard Queen. It's a great reference. And they run into one of the, instead of the 7 dwarfs, it's the 7 bottles of Duff. But that's funny. I'm thinking about it now. They go to a few amusement parks. They also go to Blocko Land.
It's like Legoland?
Where it's like Legoland, yeah. So, I don't know. I love The Simpsons, too. So,
which is interesting because The Simpsons did a Lego episode. It was literally with Legos.
That's cool. They did that great credit sequence where it was like a TOS credit sequence with all the Star Trek characters as Simpsons characters.
I don't know if I've seen that.
We'll have to post that up.
Yes.
We'll post that.
Cool. So as far as like the plot goes, there was a little bit there with the computer. Basically, it seems like it's sentient and very unhappy. It's like, I've just been here. The companion, the guy that we saw in the original episode, is dead. We find out because they find a tombstone, which I'm not sure who made the tombstone, if that was the computer that did it or
maybe the companion did it himself. That's dark.
Yeah, maybe. But it said 7,009 years of service. So if he's 7,009 years old, I'm almost wondering, is like, was the companion actually another robot? Because it said of years of operation. That's what it said, which makes it sound like he's more mechanical than human. Unless, of course, the computer made the gravestone because he kind of talks in like, well, I'm going to make them stop as opposed to killing them. So his vernacular is more computer and mechanical based than biological.
All I can really think of now is that if that Shore Leave novel doesn't exist, we need to pitch it, or we need to pitch IDW for the comic, because I feel like that'd be a sweet comic series.
Well, it might be interesting. Now we're going way off the rails, but to have the next generation characters run into that planet in the future.
I don't think this is going off the rails. I do think that's interesting, because this episode really doesn't. It's sparse. And I mean, some of these episodes give you more to chew on. I feel like that's a big disappointment of this one, is like, now, not only do you get Alice and the White Rabbit, you get the Queen of Hearts, too. So like, oh, great. Okay.
You kind of have, like, more. Data sort of has a similar, arc. Figure, like, is, trying to be human and be more, I mean, it's just, he is a sentient computer, basically. So...
Yeah,
they might have similar things to talk about. Or
think about the TNG episode and Emergence in season 7, where the ship itself starts to manifest.
Verderon City,
new
Vertiform City. Sorry, not Verderon.
Yo, don't let the Earl Grey guys hear about this. We'll have to kick you out of the Babel conference. But I love that episode. We've had discussions off mic about the pros and cons of season 7 TNG. I'm very pro. But I'm not. I wasn't a first run watcher, so it does make me kind of think about that kind of vibe that TNG could have pulled off a Shore Leave episode.
Yeah,
well, I think
you get almost like a tiny smidge of it in a feel of when they go to, it's like season 1, I guess, with the weapons planet. It kind of has a little bit of that feel, like the what is it called?
Oh, the Arsenal of Freedom.
There's Arsenal of Freedom. Yeah, it's got a little bit of that, like, pre-recorded, robot kind of.
A little of that, a little bit of Dead Stop from Enterprise, where there's that sort of sentient computer station that repairs the ship, but is also abducting people to fuel its intelligence.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're going to need to close this podcast down so we can go pitch to IDW. No.
Yes, you start drawing, I'll start plotting. We'll see you guys in 18 months when the book's out, and please buy the trade paperback. No, but I think it is interesting that each of these series does kind of have an episode that, if not necessarily parallels this in terms of plot or structure, that there are these ideas that you could say, like, oh yeah, this could work in Enterprise because of Dead Stop, this could work in TNG because of Arsenal of Freedom and Emergence. So there is something sort of interesting about the fact that what Shore Leave, the concept of Shore Leave and pleasure and free time represents in an era where people don't work for money, they work to better themselves. And you have the holodeck and the holosuites at your disposal. What does this provide that those avenues of leisure don't? There is a lot to chew on that's not...
Maybe because it's pulling from your subconscious, which is interesting because it's like these people are very PG-13 at the most. It seems like if it's really pulling from what their desires are.
And it's not even your desires. It's just whatever happens to you cross your mind. It's like
why is what... well, that's kind of interesting. McCoy is like... He basically walks up to a plantation house and we're like, well, that's not at all problematic.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Uhura didn't seem to conjure anything.
Right. She must have just been exhausted. And it's just it's nice outside. Sure. Okay. Like, I'm just tired. Like,
she was singing. She could have had like a band show up behind her or something like that. Or
it's just a little bit thin. It's a thin episode.
It is interesting that this writing team also wrote the Practical Joker, which later is another sort of sentient thing. We won't spoil it, but it's, has related to computers and kind of becoming conscious. So
in a negative way.
In a negative way, yes.
It's very rare that you
maybe not negative, but I guess it just depends on how, if computers just don't understand people, maybe. I don't know.
Like that Will Smith song, "Computers Just Don't Understand."
There's the also, the kind of, you were saying the different series. It also has a little bit of motion picture in there with the whole idea of that, the sky machines are enslaving you, and like motion pictures, like the carbon units and the.
Leave it to Aaron Harvey to make a motion picture reference. I'm just shocked. I'm just stuck.
No, but it is. It's something that's like, I'm not the only one who's made that analogy. But yeah, no, it's just like the it resolves too quickly too. Just when it's like, let me talk you out, like Kirk again talking a computer out of something. It's like, wouldn't you rather just stay here and meet all these people that come to you? Okay, sure. The end. Dun, 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 dun. And we'll have to talk about the ending too, with the picnic with the dragon and Alice. And
that's the best part of the episode. It's a 5-second shot
where they're all sitting outside. It was weird because they just talk with this computer and they literally just talk it off the ledge. And so Kirk's like, okay, shore leave's back on. Everybody come down. And
they're already on shore leave, buddy.
Yeah. But no, even if they weren't, it's just like that. You might want to say, let's not do shore leave here right now. This computer needs to think.
So Nimbus 3 is right around the block. Yeah. Just go there for a minute, figure it out. We don't have to stay there. We can go to Burger King and get out.
May I help you, sir?
If I wanted a Whopper and I asked you to hold the pickles and hold the lettuce, I know I'd get that fast. But would I get to hear you sing?
No, sir.
No?
You'd get to hear us sing. Girls?
Ooh, hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special order down upstairs. That's all we ask is that you let us serve it your way.
All right.
Yeah, we can fill your broad beef Whopper fresh with everything on top, or any way you think it's proper. Have it your way.
Hey, you got one big hit on your hands.
Well, the Whopper's one big hamburger.
Have it your way. Have it your way. Have it your way at Burger King. Come on now, have it your.
The one thing I might want to talk about, as far as just the production values and everything. And normally, it's like people make fun of the animated series, but on par or in general, it's not bad. You have a couple continuity errors every once in a while, but that's just sort of cartoons in general. This seemed to have a lot of issues. Like, it had weird Foley in places when they're running. It's like what is that noise? It's not feet on dirt or running on anything. It's short-leaf dirt. Yeah, there's supposed to be metal underneath that dirt. But there was they had bad music edits. Like, the music would just boom, boom, from one type to another. They had these weird layer issues where when Eric's and Sulu, who was not supposed to be on the ship at that point, were in their stations, and they would sort of shift, and as they shifted, the seatbelts didn't shift with them, so you could just tell that it was a plastic layer put on top. That
they were buckled in tight.
They were buckled in tight, but then it just
not tight enough.
Not tight enough. Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of weird issues. I guess that could bring us into some of the bloopers. We have, and these, like I said, I'm not sure these are so much bloopers as there are just this whole episode just seemed like it had a quality control issue.
It's just one big bloop.
So, sorry. We had tricorder strap on McCoy, which appeared randomly, and he never had a tricorder, which is also odd for Dr. McCoy. You think that he would have one. The door on the shuttle bay, when they show it kind of half opening, half closing, doesn't open from the center. It's not the clamshell. It's just from the left side, which was a little odd. We had shots of Kyle operating the transporter, but it was supposed to be Scotty, so it would bounce back and forth between them.
Well, Scotty had to go to the bathroom. He's not going to make a big deal out of it. He's just like, buddy, just stand at the console and I'll be right back. He didn't know that they would be on his shot when he was in the bathroom, but that's what happened. So it's
every 2 seconds.
It's unfortunate,
yes.
But Montgomery Scott obviously is played by James Doohan. He was doing a lot of different roles. He had to go to the bathroom. He didn't want to go to the bathroom when he was a different character. So
we had when the bridge loses when the anti-gravity, or not anti-gravity, when the bridge loses gravity, there's like 3 people, and then when everybody's floating, suddenly there's like a whole ton of people floating around. So I don't know where they came from, and I can't tell. It looks like there's the I guess it was Officer Gabler or whatever it was on the bridge, and then in engineering, like in the next cut, like just boop, he was there. So there was some just lots of continuity errors. like oh well. So that was the one thing that stood out to me compared to a lot of the other episodes, was just like, and even my boyfriend and I were watching it, and he's like, that seems really bad even for this show. I was like, yeah, I'm not the only one who noticed that, I guess.
It's like you almost expect one shot like She-Ra kind of poke around the corner. Yeah. Like, oops, like this isn't my show. I gotta go. And they just kind of forget, like they had a She-Ra lying around the Filmation office. Like, oops, we got it mixed up here. Give this back.
That came from the future,
right?
10 years from now. No, but yeah, that was interesting. We had some fun tech from the show, though. There was it's the first time that we see the interior of the hangar deck on the animated series. And you can see there's a heavy shuttle off to one side, which is we're going to see in the next episode used in Mud's Passion. And there's a long-range shuttle from the Slaver weapon, which is it the end of this season or season 2? I can't remember. I think it's this season. So that's kind of interesting. And at one point, they're trying to beam down a phaser bore, which is this sort of like almost like a post-hole digging phaser thing, which is capable of digging through 20 meters of rock per minute. And it sort of looks like almost like a rifle put down on its side with like a big kind of cone or a barrel at the bottom. But they couldn't beam it down, so they didn't get to use it.
But it's a bummer.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, so that was the kind of the Trek tech. And yeah, there wasn't too much more about the continuity. This was, like we said, a sequel to the Shore Leave Planet episode, and it was undeveloped in live action and done in animation, and
soon to be realized by us in IDW Comics. So keep an eye out. Golden Apple Comics, Earth 2 Comics. Nice. Shout out to our local LA comic providers.
Where's one where Jordan can see it in New York?
Midtown. Go to Midtown. Yeah. Midtown Comics is amazing.
Yep. So cool. Well, it's been fun talking about pitching our comic book to IDW, but that isn't the only thing we've been talking about this week on Trek FM. Here's a peek at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on the network.
Previously on Trek.fm, The Ready Room.
Pushing Daisies and Hannibal are 2 very different shows, but they both have a very strong visual look and a very strong storytelling style and a point of view. And one is quirky, and one is darkly quirky, and one is whimsically quirky.
Literary Treks.
She just does such amazing things with these characters, and it just consistently blows me away how invested I am in Chakotay's life decisions. I never ever thought that I would care 2 whits about what Chakotay does with his life, but I'm really invested here. I really care about the decisions he's making and what's going to become of him in the future.
The 602 Club.
But now by the 3rd one, you've got this really difficult task of, like every sequel has, you've got to be the same but different. And you've got to build on the success of that character that has been so cemented now by 2 movies. So the little things that started to show up in the first 2 movies, the quips, the cool clothes, all of this stuff is exponentially blown up onto a much, much bigger scale in this movie.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
So check out the shows and get in on the daily Trek Talk. You'll find them at iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, and the Windows Podcast Directory for Xbox and Zune. You can visit our website at trek.fm and view our podcast directory and stream all of our shows right from the website. We'd also like to invite you to leave us a rating and review in iTunes. Not only does it help us know how we're doing, it also helps other people find the show. Before we go, I'd like to thank our patrons, Mike Bovia, Eric Extreme, and Ju Kim. Thank you so much for your support. And if you want to become an associate producer of a Trek FM show, all you need to do is become a patron of the network at the $25 or more level. Go to patreon.com/trekfm and find out how you can become part of the team. That's patreon.com/trekfm. So, Adam, when you're not on shore leave, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter, DR0SIN. That's the number 0 in the middle there. You can find me on the Babel Conference, where we're going to be asking for suggestions for the title of our upcoming IDW Shore Leave sequel. Some early thoughts we have going are Paradise Hell is my favorite. Paradise : Hell.
Shore Stay.
Shore Stay. Bed, Breakfast, and Beelzebub, kind of like a devil bed and breakfast. What was it, Banned from the Argo you were telling me about?
Yeah, that was a Filk song from the 70s, I think, probably.
That's cool. Banned from Argo. I don't know about the connection to the movie Argo. I don't know if I want to invoke
Yeah.
that. Paradise Hell. Well, working title Paradise Hell, coming soon to a comic book store near you.
Great. And you can find me on Twitter at username GeekFilter, and I'm also in the Babel Conference as Trek FM's listener Facebook group, which is members only. But just send us a message, and we'll let you in once we've determined you're not a spam robot or a crazy hate person or something like that. So I think we really need to start sketching and putting out some ideas here. So I think we're gonna, not go outside this week, and we're going to stay in the wood panel den, grab our sketch pad, and start taking down some notes.
We'll see you in Paradise Hell.
Remember, there is an animated series.
Bye-bye.